Hi and welcome to freephotoshop.com. Today we're going to look at how we can use rulers and guides here inside of Photoshop to help us create an electronic postcard. And you'll notice that I already have a document open on screen here called Greetings from Bryce Canyon. It's a PSD file which enables me to have layers inside this image. And if we look over here to the layers palette, you'll notice that we have 4 smaller images on 4 separate layers and a layer of text here at the top. Now, if you're going to download these images from the freephotoshop.com website, then you'll notice that all the photographs provided to you are in the JPEG format. All you need to do is open up all of the images, and then with the Move tool selected, you can just drag the smaller images into the boundaries of the larger images to catch up with what you see here on my screen. Now, the first thing to note is that I have the info palette open at the top right of my screen here. And I'd suggest that you open yours if it isn't already available, and you can do that of course via the Windows menu at the top here. Now I just want you to pay particular attention to these X and Y values here in the info palette, and I'm going to switch to the marquee tool here by pressing the letter M on the keyboard just so that I have the standard cross here as a cursor. Now if I hover above the image, the X and Y values are picking up my exact location relative to the top left corner of the image. So you can see that if I start hovering from the top left corner and then move the cursor over to the right, the X value increases. And that's because the X value is measuring the horizontal plane of the image. The same happens with the Y value if I move the cursor from top to bottom, because the Y value is measuring the vertical plane. Okay, now if you look really hard at this little icon here, to the left of the X and Y coordinates, if you're watching this video at freephotoshop.com, then you should be able to see it fairly easily there. Now, what I'm trying to bring to your attention is this little arrow, meaning that we have access to a button, and if I go ahead and left click on it, you can see that I can change the type of measurement we're using for the X and Y coordinates. For now, I'll leave it set to pixels, because if we're creating this postcard for emailing, then pixels is by far the most helpful unit of measurement available to us right now. Okay, with measurements in mind, I'm going to come up here to the View menu and then select the Rulers option, which will turn on the document rulers, and at the moment I have my screen mode set to maximized. So if I come back here to the View menu, select the Screen Mode option, and then choose to revert back to the standard screen mode, and now I can press Ctrl 0 to fit the document on screen. That's Command 0 on the Macintosh, or you can just choose the Fit on Screen command from the View menu. However you do it, you should end up with a screen that looks like mine. So we have the document rulers tucked up tight with the document. Now these are rulers from which the X and Y coordinates inside the info palette are measured. Now I can change the unit of measurement by right-clicking inside the boundaries of the ruler, and I could select something like centimeters or millimeters, which will of course be dependent on the resolution of the image, and that's the advantage of working with pixels here, as they're not dependent on the resolution value of the image. So much better for this particular document, which we plan on emailing to another user who will view it on their pixel-based monitor. Anyhow, I'll leave this set to pixels, and then I'll switch the image back to the maximize mode by hitting the letter F on the keyboard once. Then I'll just zoom out of this image until we reach the 25% view size, just so the image renders more smoothly on screen. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and turn on the 4 layers that contain our downsized Bryce Canyon images, and at the moment they're all just sitting up here at the top right hand side of the document. Now what I'm going to do is position these smaller images in each corner of the document, and I'm going to make sure that they're perfectly positioned by creating some guides to work with here. Now all I'm going to do to create the first guide is drag it out from inside the ruler at the top here, and with my eye on the info palette and especially the X coordinate, I'm going to drag it to a value of 100 pixels and then release the mouse. Okay, so I've set our first guide. Now I'll drag out another guide from the left side ruler, and by the way, if you drag out a guide and then you decide you've dragged it from the wrong axis, you can hold down the Alt key here on the PC or the Option key on the Mac to switch it on the fly to the opposite plane. For now I'm going to release the Alt key and position this to a Y coordinate of 100. Now I want to do the same to the other two sides of the document, but I've got no way of knowing what the values should be. So I'm going to come back up here to the info palette and click the wing menu up here, and then choose palette options. And from here I'm going to choose to display the document dimensions. And once I've selected that, I'll hit OK to accept those changes. And now notice that the document dimensions for the active document are displayed here in the info palette. This time, to create a new guide, I'll come back up here to the View menu and then come all the way down here to the New Guide option. And now I can choose to first of all create a horizontal guide. So if I look at the horizontal dimensions of the document in the info palette over here, I can see that it's 1944 pixels. So I'll go ahead and enter 1844 and hit OK. Great, that's created the guide along the bottom. Now I'll come back up to the View menu and select New Guide once again. This time I'll select a vertical guide, and seeing as the vertical measurement of this image is 2592, I can see that from the info palette once again, I'll input a value of 2492, 100 pixels shy of the complete area of the image, and then hit the OK button. Okay, that's good. Now I'm going to use these guides to help me place the four smaller images in complete alignment to each other. Now first of all, I'm going to ensure the Move tool is selected by hitting the letter V on the keyboard. Then I'm going to make sure I have Auto Select active, and that we're auto-selecting layers as opposed to groups from this little drop-down menu. We don't actually have any groups inside this document at the moment. Finally, I'll make sure we have Show Transform controls switched off, just so we don't get the standard transform bounding box around the layer we're moving. Then I'm going to just drag this first image to the top left of the document and attempt to align it with the guides we created a few moments ago. Now if you're having trouble getting this to line up, you can either zoom in and then nudge the layer about with the arrow keys on the keyboard. I'd say that was the difficult way though. A much better idea is to come back up here to the View menu and then making sure that our snapping command or snapping option is switched on. It should have a tick next to the word if that's the case. If you already have a tick there and things aren't any easier when you're trying to align the layer, then come back up here to the View menu, select the Snap To option, and here you can either select a specific entity to snap to, or just select the All option to snap to anything and everything inside the document. Okay, with our snapping active, we'll now find it much easier to snap this layer into place. You should find it's going to be like a magnetic surge pulling the layer from your grip or from your control into alignment with the guides. Now I'll do the same with the remaining three layers, and you should just be able to auto-select them thanks to having the auto-select layer option switched on in the Move Tools options bar. Okay, once we've done that, I'm going to double left click on any of these layer thumbnails over here, as long as it's the smaller thumbnails, the smaller layers that we're clicking on, and that's going to bring up the Layer Styles dialog box. And I'm going to make these smaller images stand out a little better by first of all turning the stroke option on by ticking the little box. Then I'll click on the name to bring up the controls for the stroke effect. And I'm going to start by changing the color of the default red stroke by clicking on the swatch and then dragging the color picker up to the top left hand side of the color window to access pure white. Then I'll click OK. Now I'll make sure that the position is set to inside and that the stroke size is set to 10 pixels. Then I'll click the drop shadow option, and here I'll make sure that the shadow is set to 30 degrees. Then I'll enter a distance of 6 pixels, a spread of 14% say, and a size of 7 pixels, and then hit OK to accept the settings I've applied, not only to the drop shadow, but to the stroke as well. Once we click the OK button, we effectively accept all changes made inside the Layer Styles dialog box. Now to apply this effect to all the smaller images, I'll right click on the word Effects here underneath the layer we just got through with placing the effect onto, then choose the Copy Layer Styles option. Now I'll select the other three layers and then right click on any of them and choose the Paste Layer Styles option. Okay, that's good. Now I'll turn on the text layer at the top of the layer stack here, which happens to have a few simple words on it. Now I'll drag this down to the bottom here, roughly to where I want it. Now to make this easier to align, I'm going to come up here to the View menu, select Show, and then switch on Smart Guides. And these are usually going to prove an excellent way to work. Basically, Smart Guides will create guides on the fly when you drag the layer, or in this case the text, to match the alignment of another layer's corner, or center, or side. Let me show you what I mean. If I drag this text around the document, you'll see little magenta guides popping up all over the place and then disappearing right before our very eyes. And they're trying to tell us that if we drag slower, that it's caught a alignment point with a property from inside another layer. So if I drag down to where I want the text to end up, when I hover roughly between these two layers, we get a smart guide appear between the text, telling me that the text is now centered between these layers. Now I know the text is centered between the two layers, but I've got no way of centering it horizontally on the page as well, seeing as it doesn't align to anything that we've got in place along the axis that we want to align horizontally to. So what I'm going to do here is come up to the Layers palette and double left click on the background layer and then just OK to switch it from a flat background layer to a regular layer here inside of Photoshop. Then with the background layer active, I'm going to hit Control T here on the PC or Command T over on the Macintosh to switch to the transformation mode. Then I'm going to come over here to the ruler and drag out another guide, and because we have snapping turned on and we've got this transformation origin in the exact center of the image, we can snap the guide along the vertical center of the image like so. Okay, now I'm going to hit the escape key to leave the transform mode, and now I can drag the text to not only the vertical center of these two images, but also the horizontal center of the document. And when I reach that horizontal center, I can feel the snapping coming into effect, and that's great. Now before we call it a day, I'd like to show you a couple more things you may find helpful. First of all, if you find the color of the guides is clashing with the colors inside your document, then you can go ahead and change them, and you can do that by hitting Control K here on the PC or Command K over on the Macintosh to bring up Photoshop's preferences, then switch to this Guides, Grid, Slices and Count page here, and then just change the colors as you require. Okay, I'm going to cancel out of here and leave the colors set to their defaults here. Now finally, for deleting these guides, and just to say that first of all, that these guides don't print should you decide to print an image with guides active, but they will always be saved inside a PSD format and also inside a flattened JPEG image. And that's because the information relating to these guides is stored inside the JPEG's metadata rather than inside the actual image. So I'd say that if you don't have to delete them, then you may as well go ahead and keep them. You never know when they might come in handy in the future. And if you want to temporarily hide guides, you can come back up here to the View menu, select the Show option, and then just turn guides off. You can also toggle off and on by hitting Control or Command comma. You could also hide all the non-printable parts of your image by coming up here to the View menu and select, or should I say deselecting, the Extras option. As I say though, this will toggle the visibility of things like guides, selection outlines and even paths. To toggle visibility back on again, we can hit Control or Command H on the keyboard. Finally, if you want to permanently delete the guides, you can drag them back to the rulers with the Move tool. If you have any other tool selected, I'll go ahead and press P on the keyboard to select the Pen tool. Now I haven't got the Move tool active anymore, I'll Control drag here on the PC or Command drag on the Mac, and that just drags the guides back into the ruler, kind of on the fly. Okay, the final way, if you know you're done with the guides and you want to get rid of them for good here, you can come back up to the View menu one last time, and I promise this is going to be the last time we visit the View menu. Now you can come down here to the Clear Guides command to delete all the guides you had in the currently selected document. Okay, so here's the final result of using rulers, guides and smart guides to align our postcard. Things are looking pretty good, I'd say. Everything seems to be in order. Well, I hope you found this tutorial on freephotoshop.com to be helpful. Thanks very much for watching.